Hamilton, City Council Member.
Jody O'Cades, City Council Member.
Ronnie Price, Mayor.
Homer, City Council Member.
Phil Hamilton, City Council Member.
Tim Berry, City Council Member.
Buchanan, Police Chief.
Rick Lance, Director of Public Works and Utilities.
David Westfall, Planning Zoning Administrator.
Chad Russell, Fire Chief.
Matt Kane, Finance Director.
JT House, City Attorney.
Dana Ingstrom, City Clerk.
Les Mangus, Director of Community Development.
Jolene Graham, Assistant City Administrator. Jennifer McCausland, City Administrator.
All right, this time Brad Tugwell from Hospice, the Hospice Chaplain, will lead us in the invocation.
Let's pray. Our Father, we pause to thank you for another beautiful day of life that you have given us. Thank you for our community, and we thank you for this free nation where we are allowed to choose our leaders. We thank you for the election, and we pray at the federal, state, and county level that you would bless those who have been chosen. Give them wisdom as they continue and as they assume power. We pray for the deliberations and the decisions of this body tonight. We thank you for all those who work so hard for this community day in and day out. And as always, we thank you especially for our first responders. We ask you to bless them with protection and watch over their families as well. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
If you would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'll open the floor for public forum. If you have something you'd like to say to the council, please state your name and your address. Keep it short. Nobody. Public forum is closed. Acceptance of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Proclamation 7-1, proclamation Andover High School girls tennis team. Steve Alexander, the head coach and team.
Come on up, guys.
Yeah, that's not the tennis team.
Whereas the Kansas 5A Girls State Tennis Tournament was held on Saturday, October 19th in Andover at the Andover Public Schools Tennis Complex, and whereas the Andover High Girls Tennis Team prevailed over its opponents, thus winning their fourth straight 5A championship, and whereas the Andover High Girls Tennis Team was led by Coach Steve Alexander, Mark Cross, and Abby Stevens, and whereas team members consisted of Molly Gaddis, Elizabeth Gaddis, Mia Jarmello, Nadia Kauzai, Emma Jittawaite, and Ada Tantimsumboom, and whereas after finishing her final year by winning the Class 5A Singles Championship, Andover senior Molly Gaddis was named the Girls Tennis Player of the Year on the All-Metro team. Now, therefore, I, Phil Hamilton, with the City Council assembled in regular session on the 12th day of November 2024, hereby proclaim November 13th, 2024 as Andover High School Girls Tennis Team Day.
Congratulations.
Bag sponsor. Bag sponsor.
Presentation 8-1, 3Q Municipal Golf Course And Dick Stunts is going to talk to us. How are you, sir?
I'm good. You?
Wonderful.
Good, good. Just real briefly, the third quarter was down slightly on year over year as far as participation goes and revenues. But if you add all three quarters, first, second, and third quarter of 2024, we are up slightly, just slightly. We're up about 2%. So really, all in all, a pretty positive report. It doesn't involve the third quarter, but we are now underway with our irrigation mainline project that was approved by the council here a few weeks ago. And we just got started 2 days ago, and we're underway, and things are going well. With that, I'd take any questions you might have.
Mr. Stuntz, I got a couple of questions here.
Okay.
The first one is on the first page of financials, the profit and loss. I just kind of went back and I compared to previous quarters on the various line items. On the charitable contribution, it looks like it jumped quite a bit from what it usually sits at, and it was just over $1,500 for the quarter. Was that to like a singular charitable organization, or was that comprised of multiple charitable donations?
I couldn't say right offhand.
Okay.
But I can sure get back to you on that.
Got it. And then the second one, let's jump over to the balance sheet. So I noticed you're carrying a short-term loan to JC Monta for $1,500. I went back to see how long, and it looks like in Q4 of 2023 is when that loan happened. And then it's been carried at that balance for the last 3 quarters now. I just didn't know if you had any additional details on the timing of that payment of that, since it's being carried as a short-term loan on the balance sheet.
Trying to find it here. Short-term loan. JC.
Just under the assets, the other current assets is the first line item under the other current assets.
Yes, no, that is still outstanding.
Got it.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Consent agenda 9-1 through 9-4.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to I move to approve consent agenda items 9.1 through 9.4 as presented.
Second, O'Kadys.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Budget amendment presentation, set public hearing date, 2024 amended budget hearing notice. And Matt is going to talk to us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Oh, you can't really respond. Thanks for having me. That's what I should say. Okay, I went through most of the budget amendments in pretty good detail in the memo, but just for the sake of questions, I'm going to go ahead and run through them real quick, just so that I feel like we covered them and you had the chance. So just from top to bottom here, we have 11 funds that we're requesting to amend the budget authority for this year. The first one is the Special Highway Fund. The item that put us over budget in the Special Highway Fund is the crack sealer that we purchased in advance. It was budgeted for in 2025, but the need arose sooner. So we bought it early. So since we were amending in that fund and we have a pretty healthy cash balance, we're also requesting that we increase the transfer to reserve from that fund by $100,000. The Tourism to CBV Fund goes hand in hand with the Festivals Fund. We've had a lot of conversation about the costs for the amphitheater this year, and that they've been higher than originally budgeted. The time we wrote this budget, we really had no idea. And then those costs came in higher than expected prior. So from tourism specifically, Ginny already met with that board and had them approve the additional transfer. So that's what we're approving in that fund. And then the Festivals Fund will be the actual increase to pay the additional to ASM. The Water Utility Fund and the Stormwater Utility Fund are the same story, that we had city participation in 2 subdivisions, and those were not budgeted for 2024. So we need to amend the expenditure authority in those funds to allow for that. The Street Improvement Fund looks like a lot, and it is a lot of money. But the reason that we're amending the expenditures is really just because We feel like it tells the story better and shows the investment that's going into the streets in the city if we show the expenditure and then show the grant funds that we've received as revenues. We could book them in as reimbursement into an expense line, which would eliminate the need for an amendment in this fund, but we just didn't feel like it shows what's truly happening as well. The sewer expansion and reserve fund, we are in the design process or nearing completion of the design process, if I'm correct on that. Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. Of the wastewater treatment facility expansion. And that we just actually got a little bit further along in the process during 2024 than anticipated. So we need to amend that budget. That one, as you can see, is from the expansion reserve fund. So it has a healthy cash balance that we will start whittling down as we get into construction on that project. The vehicle lease fund is probably the one fund that we have that's the closest to true amendment, because it is just that we spent more, we leased more vehicles than we knew we would in 2024. So that cost is higher than originally planned. Trash and recycle fund is higher than originally planned, but that's a fund that all of our expenses are supported by a revenue through our monthly utility billing process. So essentially it's a pass-through fund. We just need to increase the budget authority. The golf fund, the irrigation project that was just referenced during that report is now underway. That was approved in August, maybe? End of August, yeah. So that project did cost more than originally planned, so we need to amend the golf fund to allow for that expenditure, and that will be an additional transfer from the general fund. And then the TIF fund is one that was originally a project fund. It didn't used to be a budgeted fund, but in looking at how that was going to work, we decided that it would probably be better to go ahead and budget for the expenditures that we've had this year so that we can start booking the revenues that the TIF district generates into that fund separately from our debt service fund. And then when we need to make payments, we will transfer what's needed from that fund into the debt service fund, which will leave anything that's left over in the long run, anything that's left over in the TIF fund as a cash balance. And then 17 years from now, when it's all done, it'll be completely separate from the debt service fund and able to be transferred to the general fund. Any questions?
Matt, I think you skipped the stormwater utility, not that it's.
I lumped it with the water utility fund. Sorry. It's the same reason as the water utility fund. Is we had two subdivisions that the city participated in and we didn't budget for it originally.
Sure.
Because it was in the project fund. And so then when we closed out those projects, we had to transfer that portion, the city's portion of the expense, into the utility fund.
Matt, do we have a policy or an ordinance about how we can, this TIF? I know we're trying to keep it separate but in 17 years, if we have excess money in there, I mean, does it just automatically go back to general fund, or is it kind of a slush fund that the city council at that time can just use, or do we have a policy for that?
I think the answer is yes to all of that. It is by state statute, TIF funds left over at the end of a TIF go back to the city.
Okay.
And can be used for the discretion of the city.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to set the public hearing for the proposed 2024 amended budget for November 26th, 2024 city council meeting.
Second, Barry.
Any further questions or discussion?
I really like the layout, of your synopsis, the summaries of this. It really helped me focus on what the changes were, why, how, and I think it really helped the city of the constituents, our members, if they look at it, they can take a look and see what is amended. So I really appreciate that, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
11-1 Redbud Trail Edition, Boffman Engineering Agreement, and Jolene Graham will speak to us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is an engineering contract with Boffman Company, and it is for the design of the improvements on Harrison Street as part of the Redbud Trail Edition, which you may have attended the groundbreaking for the Point 9 Trail Eatery. I did want to point your direction to the note on the agenda report, just letting you know that staff is going to inquire about a possible opportunity for material and mobilization savings via negotiated change order from Pearson Construction, who's currently doing work for the city in approximate area of this location for Harrison Street. For your awareness, the total cost of the project is $461,000. Of that, $307,000 is for construction. Any type of change order or construction contract will be brought to you for consideration in the future. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So as far as construction goes, Jolene, that'll still be put out to bid. This is just for the engineering of the street and the Redbud Trail.
This is for the engineering and the inspection services. So that is an option that we can go ahead and bid this project, but it is considered that there may be savings to be able to capture if we do reach out to the contractor who is on site. We're welcome to any feedback from the council on that.
And then if you reach out and they come in below the engineering estimate, we wouldn't put it out to bid at all. We would just take whatever they said then, as long as it was under the engineering's estimate.
That would be what we would bring to you for consideration. Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
what project are they working on currently?
So currently they are on 2 projects for us. One is Founders Parkway, and then also the street rehabilitation project, 8th Street, 10th Street, and
Murdoch.
Murdoch. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And then Boffman is the person doing the development at Andover and Harrison. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
they are doing the engineering work for that development.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the agreement with Boffman Company, PA, Wichita, Kansas, for the engineering, design, and construction phase services for the public improvements related to Redbud Trail Edition in the not to exceed amount of $48,700.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Meadowbrook 4th Edition, final plat of Meadowbrook, and David will talk to us about this evening. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
All right, thank you.
Great. So this subdivision would just be the next phase in the Meadowbrook subdivision. It is just east of the existing subdivision. It's a single parcel property, approximately 14.79 acres in size, and currently is just a vacant lot. It is currently zoned SF2, the same as the existing subdivision, and is currently served by Evergene and Andover Sewer and Water Services. It would receive access from Harry Street. The subdivision committee reviewed this plat and recommended approval on October 8th as well. The planning commission reviewed and recommended approval on the October 15th meeting. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Anyone?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Les, this is the one that they're doing in phases, right?
Yes, this developer has chosen to do a preliminary plat of a large area, not a planned unit development,
Mhm.
but then just take down the individual final plats, the typical 30, 40 lots at a time.
Okay, all right. That's what I was thinking. I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the dedications on the Meadowbrook 4th edition final plat as approved by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 12-2 Meadowbrook 4th edition petition, resolution of advisability and developer agreement. And Jolene will speak to us on this matter.
Related to the item that you just approved are the petitions for paving, stormwater, sanitary sewer, and water distribution system improvements for Meadowbrook 4. Also is the developer's agreement and the resolution of advisability related to this addition. The developer is petitioning the city for new improvements, and the developer's agreement is our agreement with the developer on these required improvements through the use of special assessment financing. Also, as you'll note in your agenda report, the financial guarantee has been received. And per the city policy, 100% of these properties will be the benefiting district for these improvements. The city attorney has reviewed these petitions and the developer's agreement and drafted the resolution of advisability. I'd be happy to field any questions that you have.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Each of these phases will be annexed into the city.
Les, can you take that one?
Sure. This developer, like I said, has a slightly different method for his development. He brings in each parcel to be platted individually. He owns a larger tract, but he's only brought in the phases for annexation as he's ready to bring them on as finished lots to put on the market.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So am I reading that the previous, the aerial map of this, it's not in the city limits then?
It is.
Okay.
We annexed it a few months ago. Oftentimes there's a little bit of a lag in the county's GIS showing what's been annexed.
Done. Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the petitions for paving, sanitary sewer, and water distribution system improvements, approve the developer's agreement, and adopt a resolution of advisability related to Meadowbrook 4th edition.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 12-3 Meadowbrook 4th edition work ordinance. And Jolene, again, will talk on this matter.
This is the last in the items for Meadowbrook 4th edition, and it's to authorize the construction of the subject improvements. The city attorney has prepared the ordinance and happy to stand for any questions.
Anyone? Can I get a
Mis-
vote?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the construction of certain internal improvements related to the Meadowbrook 4th edition.
Second, O'Kades.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 13-1 preliminary PUD Penner edition. And at this time, I'll read this checklist, case number Z-PUD 24-0005. This is an application to establish the Penner Addition Planned Unit Development plan generally located at southeast corner of North Andover Road and Southwest 60th Street, Andover, Kansas. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask council if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they have a conflict of interest.
No.
No.
I will now ask I will now ask the council if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communication prior to this agenda item which they would like to share.
No.
Has the city clerk received any protest petitions on the case?
No, sir.
I now ask the council members if they have all received copies of the draft minutes of the Planning Commission for October 15th, 2024, which summarizes the hearing on this case.
Yes.
I will now call on City Zoning Administrator David Westfall to provide us with a report on this case.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Subject property in this case is generally located in the southeast corner of Southwest 60th Street in Andover Road. It's currently zoned Ag 40 under the Butler County zoning district. The item tonight would be looking to establish a underlying zoning district as well as a subdivision component. I'd be amending the zoning district from Ag 40 to MF2 attached single-family residential district, with some exceptions for SF3, single-family residential zero lot line district. The applicant has divided the PUD into 3 planning areas for this mix of MF2 and SF3, and this is due to the applicant's desire to retain some flexibility for the housing market as it changes, while ultimately keeping the public interest intact. Our primary concern as staff with this plan was ensuring that we limit density to be within close proximity to arterial streets. It's well within our comprehensive plan, as well as, you know, the housing market desire to have some other more dense housing options, but being a little further away from emergency response locations could present a challenge. So we're looking to really limit that to be very close to those arterial streets. In addition, the PUD would include a lot of rear loading dwellings that enable for some additional green space, such as parklets between residences, which adds some additional fire and rescue concerns, which we have mitigated in this planning. This PUD would contain 2 potential access points, both of them along Andover Road. One of them would be temporary at Roselawn Circle, and we would be adding more access points to the north and east as the PUD progresses further into development. Water and sewer for the subject property is served and would continue to be served by Rural Water District Number 5 and Butler Rural Electric. Sanitary sewers would need to be extended to the property as well. Your Planning Commission recommended approval for this submittal at the October 15th, 2024 meeting.
Oh, sorry. Went sleep to Will. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I just have one question. David, in regards to the parklets, is this subdivision then still, is it going to be operated by the developer, or do those parklets then become city property? I mean, who regulates the parklets?
That would be the developer. That would not be the city. They haven't made any
Okay.
such agreement.
Thank you.
David, correct me if I'm wrong, but a while back, wasn't the understanding that any development over 10 acres would have to dedicate a piece of that for some kind of city park within that area?
You the man, Les. We're playing stump the staff.
We had a park plan in the past that suggested that we have a minimum 5 acres public park in every square mile. That notion, as I understand it, in the current park plan doesn't carry through from the old plan. This subdivision does have some rather large reserve areas, but those aren't public parks. Those are HOA parks, in addition to those parklets, which are the small areas between the higher density single-family homes.
So I'm gonna, Rick, can we, especially this far north, can we service them via sewer?
Good question. That's what I was
Well-
thinking.
So there, gravity, a portion of it. This whole, the whole future area cannot be service gravity. We are up in that neighborhood and in a few areas coming to the limits of our gravity feed sewer system. Now, I will tell you, we might be the only city in the state of Kansas with the population of what we do that has 0 lift stations. So while it's been great, it's been a nice run, and I'm sure all the staff loves not having any lift stations. At some point, to continue with growth, we're gonna have to put in lift stations. So we've been discussing, staff has been discussing the best method of going about and thinking through where you put a lift station, and maybe it's a little bit different, and maybe it's more of a larger public lift station. It's not just servicing, well, it would always be a public lift station, not one just designed to handle this neighborhood, but one to handle a larger area. Because we do have a nice sized sewer line that comes up 21st Street that can handle a lot more flow in it. Because we did that study, if some of you remember back in 20. So how we haven't fully come to a conclusion on what we do there, but yes, it can be served, and some of it can be served by existing the way it is. This phase, I believe, is part of the phase that can be served by gravity now. But do we come up a different direction than what would be the easy way? Is some of the things we're still working through, but it's definitely servable.
I mean, I love growth. I love new homes, new things coming. But I mean, we're gonna have to really start thinking about how much is a lift station? I mean, are we talking $3 million, $20 million? I mean,
Well, no, it's not 3 million, but it's been, I've been here going 19 years. So let's put it this way, the price that I know what a lift station costs has drastically changed.
oh, sure.
But, it's not going to be cheap, but it'll be something that, we'll lay out to be able to afford us more growth as we go. But I would just say it's very common to have them in the town.
And they need the ROI
And they need,
worth it for these pump stations and all that.
they also have to be maintained where that's just not going away. You get a phone call in the middle of the night that somebody will have to go take care of business. So, but it is inevitable. Didn't we have one at one time, or?
Before they built the new plant and redid everything. When they built the new plant, some people did some really nice job. I don't know if last year here when that happened, but when the new plant was built down, they were able to get rid of existing lift stations and do gravity feed. So, it's been a long run, and, I had no illusions that someday we would have to have them.
Then water, do we have any concerns with, Matt, do we have any concerns with Butler Rural Water being able to handle this?
Well, that's another deal where they're work through with Wichita, but I believe there's some discussion, and I think Les has been part of that conversation, where there might be some commingling Wichita Water over there as far as the water, but Les can expand upon that more.
The developer has been talking to Rural Water 5. They can serve at least the first phase of this development with their existing lines. But as the thing would mature, the water district needs to bring on a water tower. They've already purchased the land for it. They've programmed it in their CIP. This project would just move it a little higher up on their list of things to do. But I will say that the developer is also talking to Wichita Water to see if there's a possibility that they could get out of Rural Water District service area and get on the Andover Wichita system.
I mean, as a elected official, we do not want any of our citizens to call us and say, oh my God, we have no water. So, I mean, whatever we can do.
So in this location. Rural Water District 5 water and Wichita water are one and the same.
Okay.
Rural Water 5 is actually pumping off of Wichita's system over at 29th and Greenwich-ish.
Okay.
And they have a line that runs straight down 29th Street past this property that connects into their existing system.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So then, Rick, in regards to the sewer, or the stormwater, if we approve this and take out the pump station, but is it then just all served by the ditches that are up there then? As far as on the east, this is on the east side of Andover Road, right?
So this sanitary sewer is always carried in pipes back to the plant to be treated. The stormwater, this will have storm sewer system that will ultimately dump in to, all storm sewers end up in either ditches or creeks. It's just where it ends up. That's why we always say don't dump anything in it, because it doesn't get treated. It ultimately ends up in your streets, creeks, and rivers, and ultimately into the Gulf of Mexico from here. So the storm sewer side, it'll be gravity fed out to the ditch, and it runs down and get into 21st, and it'll carry on through. And some of it, I believe, does actually end up going back. And there's some storm sewer detention ponds, and there's always in these developments, there's always some pre and post designs that go in to make sure that the runoff rate doesn't exceed the existing rate once it's all developed out. And is usually accomplished through a couple different methods, and dry and wet ponds is the most common in this part of the country. And so as far as that goes, does that answer your question? So the storm sewer stuff will ultimately end up in an open ditch somewhere, regardless of which side it goes out. And as it goes further down, I'm not sure if when you get further down on the hill, it might go to Dry Creek.
Well, so do we own property, or are we gonna have to do easements in there, or how is that gonna?
So we can dump water out to where it always goes. We just, the caution is not to create the rate of flow. So if water dumps into a drainage way now and you develop it, you can dump it back into that drainage way, as long as you're taking care with the engineering to make sure that your post-development runoff rate doesn't cause flooding downstream.
And so I don't see anything on this with a dry detention pond or anything like that. Is there gonna be a plan for one on this, or? Isn't there a lot of space between like
Sure.
what we own, what's already developed, and then this
What you're seeing on the screen now is actually just the first phase of this development. So only about a third. And where it has the reserve G marked, that's actually the drainage way for the majority of the subdivision, where there will be a system of ponds and pipes that eventually get water to the north and east, where it exits the property and heads off towards Dry Creek where it does today.
Yeah, and you're looking at survey plats, so you're not looking at engineering drawings. So this is just explaining to you what the plat or the PUD looks like without getting into engineering.
Councilmember Henry, I would like to also point out that the city rarely, very rarely owns the detention ponds or land, that is usually the ownership of an HOA. One rare instance I can think of is we actually made it part of the park is on Heritage. We own those. But generally speaking, dry and wet ponds for detention are owned by the private ownership, either an HOA or something like that. And this is no different here. So maintenance of that does not fall on the city either.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it does show this in the planning zoning, they show the hydrostatic or hydro, what the water does. I can't think of the word right now.
Right.
That's
There
in the
was a
plan.
full drainage report
Right.
in the planning commission minutes, 79 pages of enlightening reading.
What about traffic, Rick? If we fill this up, do we have plans to widen Andover Road?
So again, We've talked about that, and once you get a few years down the road, and as it starts to fill up, there could be the need to do an expansion on Andover Road, and that's been in the plans, and I believe that's in a part of WAMPO's long range, goes in and out of the process. At some point you could see it go to a 4-lane type of, extended on through.
We here in Andover have always, it seems like we've always forecast and we've always planned. I just don't want to, oh crap, we did this development and it's only 2 lanes. So
We'll build, you'll have the 2-lane now. Generally speaking, if we go to a 4-lane, it'll be tearing it all out and doing it, because you'll lower the road and put in storm sewers and stuff like that. But that's the 2-lane mat is out there now, is adequate for the time being, and will be for a while. Now, it always depends on how fast the development gets filled up, and you always hear these estimates on how fast this will happen, but there's no need to run out and build something now that you don't need maybe for 8-10 years.
If those folks that live out there, I can tell you from walking the whole city when I ran for mayor, that those folks, 99% of them will go up 21st Street, not down Andover Road. And so I say that to say, if we get the development going on the northeast corner or anywhere down there, it will be traffic easement for that. Those folks are not going to drive all the way through Andover to shop at Dillon's. We'd like to think they would, but that's just not reality. So the widening of 21st Street, of Andover Road, is probably not going to be a real high priority in regards to where those folks are going to shop and all that neat stuff. Anyway, anyone else? All right. Have any written communication been received by the city clerk?
No, sir.
Does the applicant wish to present any new information? Would the public like to, we would like to welcome everyone interested in this agenda item to come to the podium and give your name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The governing body has been provided the draft minutes, and the video of the hearing has been made available. So please limit your comments to information not previously shared at the public hearing held on October 15th, 2024. Does anyone from the public have any new information? No one from the public is here. Does the applicant have any further response or want to make any comments? No. Assuming the council has received all the information they need on this case, you have received the outlines of the choices provided under the state statute for council action. K.SA 12-757C. Council, how do you wish to act?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt the planning commission's finding of fact and recommendation for approval for zoning case Z PUD 24-0005 and approve an ordinance adopting the Penner Addition preliminary planned unit development plan.
second, Barry.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Persons aggrieved by the final decision of the council on this matter have 30 days after today's action within which to appeal to the district court. (14-1) bid award water and sewer Tuscany Addition Phase 4, and Rick's going to talk to us about this.
Mr. Mayor and Council, before you tonight is the award of the water and sewer extensions and internal improvements for Tuscany 4th Edition. This should be the final phase of this addition, as the land owned by the developer it borders the edge of this. These plans were developed and then bid on November 5th at 10 a.m. And the low bid was below the engineer's estimate and within the petition limits. This is 100% paid for by special assessments. I would say that, and someone might notice there's only 2 bids on this. They had 7 plant holders, but there's apparently a fair amount of work being bid right now, and that's the only 2 that we're interested in. And if you look at the bids, you might tell that one of them really wasn't real interested either. But the low bid was a very good bid, and we've had Meese Construction do a fair amount of work in Andover, and we've had good luck with them, and we recommend approval.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the lowest qualified bid from Meese Construction Incorporated, Wichita, Kansas, and then not to exceed amount of $322,384, and reject all other bids and authorize the mayor to sign the contract for sanitary sewer and water distribution system improvements to serve Tuscany Addition 4th Phase.
Second, O'Kades.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 15-1, supplemental agreement for professional engineering consultant, Yorktown Parkway. And Les, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, for your consideration tonight is a supplemental agreement for the construction engineering services with PEC for the Yorktown Parkway project. For those of you that were not on the council when this project originated, the engineering was broken into different phases. There was a survey phase, there was a concept phase, then the preliminary engineering, the hard design. This is that last and final phase where PEC will provide us with construction, inspection, administration out there in the field as the work is being built. I would like to note that this agreement is substantially less than the original estimate, which helps us free up some of those sales tax dollars for other projects.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
move to approve the agreement for professional services with PEC for the Yorktown Parkway, Central Avenue to 13th Street project construction, engineering in the amount of $400,500.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 16-1 is Zayo franchise agreement. Is that how you say it?
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, this has been years in the making. Sometimes you have projects that just linger and you're work, get the city attorney's office involved, they work, then you send something off and it seems to fall into a black hole. That was the story of the Zayo franchise agreement for a number of years, but I think they've worked through some turnover. They first came to town, I guess that would be about 16 years ago, primarily for a USD project. I believe they provide service to the school district. Not to speak ill of any franchise, but I do believe that's about all they serve in the community. So they have not been one of those that has gone gangbusters and come in and really tried to increase their uptake on clientele. Not to say they won't in the future, but in order to keep that infrastructure in the right of way, they do have to have a franchise agreement in place. So thankfully, they're now compliant because the previous one did expire in 2018. So we're really thrilled to finally get this back legally compliant. I'd be happy to answer any questions. They did allow us to make a change that your Director of Public Works requested, which was a very helpful addition. They already were bound by all of our other franchise agreements that if they're going to work in our right of way to let us know. What we have increasingly experienced in the community is when the franchisees go into those utility right of ways, which they aren't always required, actually until this one, they've never been required to tell us about because those are private easements with the express purpose for utilities. So they have the right to go into those at any time. But if they don't tell us, we get the calls. People don't typically figure out who it is in their backyard. They just call the city and say somebody's back here in my yard. So per Rick's wise request, we put that in and they agreed to let us know by telephone in advance before they'll come into those private easements, which we think will offer better customer service.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Jenny, I got a question. In regards to, I realized there was some turnover and the on and off again communication or with you and Zayo. We just never had, we did have an agreement. It did expire. What do we do in between the 6 years then? I mean,
You try really hard and then you call the city attorney and he says, you have a lot of documentation that you tried really hard and there's not much else we can do. I would be happy to let JT opine on the legality of all of that. The likelihood of asking them to remove all of that infrastructure seems like a lot, but I suppose that is ultimately the only recourse.
I mean, I guess I'm asking, where does do we have do we cut it off? Or, I mean, is there something like that happens or when these agreements aren't fulfilled?
What's the recourse, I guess? Yeah.
What's our dog in the fight kind of thing? JT, can you help?
Well, with fiber, it's difficult because there's a whole lot of federal and state laws that say they can use your right of way without a franchise. And then there's some state laws that say if they're going to run a telecommunications operation, that they do have to have a franchise. At the end of the day, with respect to most utilities, by law, they're required to have a franchise. And if they're operating without one, we usually call the Attorney General and turn them in. Here, however, it was just sort of like a long period of miscommunication, and there weren't, the other thing that happens is with most franchise, we're receiving a franchise fee of some significant portion. And so then if they're continuing to operate and they're paying their franchise fee, we kind of had a double-edged sword because while we really would like them to negotiate a franchise, we really would also like to continue to receive the franchise fee that we're getting. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. At the end of the day, in most cases, it's unlawful for a utility to operate without a franchise agreement, and that's how we get them to renew.
So we were still getting paid. We just didn't have the agreement in place.
Correct. And the payments here are probably not huge. Again, this particular provider provides inter-building. Their model, at least in other communities, I don't know about Andover, but is to provide fiber connections for inter-building industrial and commercial use. So they're not doing like the fiber to door thing that you'd see from Ideatech. They're like, if you had two buildings on the opposite ends of town, you would connect them by fiber because then the communication would allow you to effectively operate your computer system out of one building and link everybody up at sort of, for lack of a better term, lightning speeds. This is their model. And this is where they have, I think, a lot of their businesses with school districts because, of course, school buildings are one of the things that most communities have that they want to keep connected, but that are not located next to one another. And so while there is a franchise fee paid on that, it's comparatively small to like if every residential customer was to take your service.
All right. Thanks, JT.
Jenny, is the thought that as any of these old franchise agreements expire and we have to do new ones, or we're approached with new franchise agreements, that we'll request that the verbiage be put in there for the private utility easements on all of them?
Yes, we weren't sure how it would be received, but it was kind of easy, for lack of a better term. They didn't have any arguments with that.
Once again, it will be easier with this group than it will be with someone like a fiber to home provider who's in private utility easements all the time and isn't going to want to call. I mean, if you're in a right of way between school buildings, it's a little different situation. So they agreed to it. It's great. We don't know whether we'll be able to get that agreement in the future.
So moving forward, Jenny, do we have, I guess, do you keep a file of every franchise agreement and when they come up due and we start a year prior? I don't know what it is, but just to keep them rolling. And
We have a spreadsheet of all of the expiration dates.
okay, perfect.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt an ordinance granting a franchise and authoring Zayo Group LLC, a telecommunications local exchange service provider, to provide local exchange service within the city of Andover, Kansas.
Second, Barry.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Member items, we'll start with Paul.
I don't have anything at this time, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to go back to yesterday and thank all the veterans who serve us and what they do, and just appreciate their service.
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything either.
On Mike's sentiments, happy birthday to the United States Marine Corps. Their birthday was Sunday, I believe. And chamber-wise, Jingle Mingle at the Andover State Bank is December 5th from 6 to 8:30. Open to the public, a night of food, drinks, and fun. And get your tickets at the chamber website, andoverchamber.com. The Andover Chamber also has a new home. I don't know if anyone knows. That's at the Sammy Halisay Institute there on Andover Road. So
On the
stop
very-
by.
Very south end.
Stop by and tell Lori hi.
We've got a home Jaguars football game on Friday. We're in the, Tim, quarterfinals now,
Sure.
I think. So,
I just flip burgers. I don't know.
yeah, hopefully they can come out with a win.
Wellington?
Wellington.
Yep.
Wellington. And that's all I got.
So I'll follow up with Mr. Councilmember Hamilton. Yes, come on out Friday night. Make sure you stop by the concession stand, get a hamburger or cheeseburger. I hear the cook is handsome and cooks them really well. So
He is.
it's a little weird, but all right. I will say, it's funny, we talked about the whole Zayo thing, because I just got a letter in the mail today from Idea Tech telling me they're going to be in my backyard running fiber optics. So it's exciting. So I have nothing else.
I'm glad to say that 10th Street got done, the 8th Street's being done, and Murdoch will be done shortly. That's music to my ears. My neighbors will be very happy. And Chief Russell and myself and Homer and former member of Troy Tabor, he's part of CASA, and it's a very important thing. And we had the privilege of being a part of a fundraiser for them, and Andover really represented the cause well, and it was or entertaining and a good time, wasn't it, Chief? So I appreciate that, sir.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adjourn.
Second, Barry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0.
She was like,